welcome back to my channel. My name is Kirsten. I am an entrepreneur, an expat, a coach, and a freelance writer, and this is part 3 of my what is it like living in Spain as a language assistant or auxiliares de conversaciones, or aux, as we like to call it. And so if you haven't already, I'm like sweating because I'm filming this in the middle of summer in Spain, and tidbit, July and August here in the south of Spain are very hot months. So this is going to be the third part. I've done parts 1 and 2. If you haven't checked them out, you can click the link in the description and check out parts 1 and 2, where I talk more about the day-to-day life and what it's like actually working within a school. And this video, to close off this series, is going to be about the pros and cons of being a language assistant. And so my intention for this video is to really help you understand the positives and the negatives about being a language assistant. So if this is something you're thinking about doing, you'll know like the good and the bad. And if this is something that you're about to do, you'll also be more prepared on how to deal with like the cons or the less attractive things about being a language assistant. So before we get started, don't forget to like this video and click the subscribe button so that you can get more content around traveling and living abroad. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with the cons, so that way we can end this video on a positive note. And so I'll try to give you some tips to kind of counteract the cons that I'm about to mention. So the con number 1 is payments. So the pay will range depending on the pay depends on where you are placed. I know my first year I was placed in the region of Murcia, and so that pay was, I believe, $8.75, and then $8.75 a month, €8.75. Now, when I moved to the Andalusia region, the pay decreased because the cost of living is lower in some cases, and that went to €700 a month. If you are placed in Madrid, it'll be about $1,000 a month, and I think that's the highest it goes. I could be wrong, but from what I know. So a quick hot tip, something that I now in hindsight wish I would have done, is now that you kind of have the numbers of what you would make depending on your region, create like an imaginary budget for that. Think about, like, you can go to nubio.com and get like a general cost of living and really kind of think about where your money's going to go. Do you want to take trips when you're here? Do you want to work abroad, or do you want to travel abroad? Do you want to travel within the country? Think about your lifestyle that you want to have. A lot of Auxes that I've talked to and met, they stress and struggle over money. Even though the cost of living is lower, a lot lower, and you can get like a beer for €2, it's still something to be mindful of. Your money is still something that you have to stay on top of if you want to get the full benefit of living abroad. So the pay, now keep in mind, if you come from me, like you're coming from California, where the cost of living is very high, and $1,000 like is what you would pay to rent a room in a house or in a place with someone, or $8.75 it might be your rent. It might seem like not a lot. However, the stipend or the pay that you get is enough to cover your basic needs, and if you share a room. So if you decide to live on your own, which I did the last 2 years of my aux program, the stipend pretty much covered my basic needs. So my rent, my groceries, electricity, gas, all of like the bare minimum stuff. If you share an apartment, it will give you a little bit more flexibility when it comes to like what you can afford. So usually, for rent, last year I was paying $350, And then my first year, I'm going to probably do a longer video on my cost of living for my first year in Spain to kind of give you a more detailed view. But I think when I was sharing a room my first year, my pay was like around 200 euros. So, when you think about that, like you're thinking about your biggest cost of living, your biggest expense will be your rent, it still gives you a little bit of wiggle room. If you want to travel, if you want to go shopping, if you want to buy things for your apartment, then you're going to want to make sure that you do some side hustles. You tutor kids on the side, teach English classes, whatever. If you want a longer video on like how to get side hustles started, especially when you're in Spain, or just how to get side hustles started in general, let me know. I'll leave a comment below. The second part of the payment is that you may not get paid, most likely, depending on your region and depending on the program. If you're in like beta, I was in the government program, you're most likely not going to get paid on time. So tip, come with some money saved or know how to hustle. I definitely had to hustle my first year and get some side gigs so that I could, pay for groceries and eat and things like that. So it's always good to come with some extra money. They say, I think, come with like 2 months of savings and like your cost of living, like 2 months, just to cover. Number two is you aren't going to necessarily be able to decide in your first year, you're not going to be able to decide where you're placed in the sense of specifically where you're placed. The application process will ask you what region and what city you would, I believe what city, but what region you would like to be placed in. It gives you have your top 3 options. However, they will place you wherever within the regions that you request, sometimes not at all, depending on when you apply. So a tip with that, I don't know if it's actually been proven, but it's worked on mine. And if you are applying for the program, try to apply as early as possible. The application process, I believe, is open for about 2 months. I can't remember when the application process starts. It's already closed for this year, but I think it starts in like February or January. I'll look it up. But try to apply as early as you can because it just increases your chances. Again, it's not guaranteed. You can be like one of the first. And going with that, another con, the third con, is transportation. So when you finally know where you're going to be placed, and another fourth con I would say is also the paperwork is very slow, so it's going to take some time. I know a lot of issues that happened last year was that it took a really long time for people to get their paperwork, and I'll talk get their placement. I'll talk about that in a little bit later. But transportation, so once you find out where you're going to get placed and where the school is, Google it, look it up, and see exactly, what the buses are. Ask people if they go into the Facebook groups, ask people if they were placed at your school the year before so that you know how to get there, because the transportation system is overall in Spain is pretty decent when it comes to traveling from like one city to the next. However, when you get to the pueblos, the smaller towns, it can get a little tricky. So sometimes the schools are very helpful when it comes to transportation. My school was, and I was able to ride with my coworkers, and they drove me to school and back every day that I worked. But some schools are not, and I've seen some offices have those troubles. You should not be asked to rent a car. Don't do that. And yeah, so transportation is going to be, it could be a difficult thing. So keep that in mind, that you might have to be a little bit flexible. You might have to catch an earlier bus to get to the school on time. I know some of my friends had to do that. So yeah. Well, this is fun. Ooh. Back. So, talking about the cons. So, I don't know if I mentioned this in the other video, but you don't get to choose, you get to choose your region, and not specifically the school that you want to be in or the city that you want to be in. And the good thing though is that in if you like the school that you were in your first year, you have the opportunity to renew and you can repeat that year. However, every region has different restrictions. So sometimes you'll be able to renew for 1 year. Sometimes you'll be able to renew for 3 years in a row, and sometimes no. So the first year, you get priority. If you are renewing again for the third year, for whatever reason, you get less priority, it seems. I don't know that for a fact, but just from experiences of other people that I know in the AUX program, it can get a little bit trickier and the paperwork is a little slow. So keep in mind, if you're on your third year and you're not renewing, you're going to a new region, it might take a little bit longer to get your paperwork, which means you might need to go back to your home country you might have to go back to your old country, your home country, to get a new visa. So that's something just to keep in. So obviously, the biggest pro is that you get to live in Spain, which means that you get to be surrounded by a new culture, which I know a lot of people that I spoke to, that I've coached, one of their number one reasons to go abroad is because they want to experience a different culture. You definitely will get to experience that here in Spain. Like, you won't be sheltered. So yeah, so that's a positive. You'll get to meet new people if you. Okay, well, if you are wanting to improve your Spanish, that will definitely happen. Interact with people, you'll get to meet new people, and that's probably the biggest pro and advantage, is that if you ever had a dream to live abroad and be immersed in a different culture, then your dream will come true with this program. If you were someone that struggled with, maybe you come from like a very corporate environment, maybe you felt like when you were living in your home country, you were overworking, you're working yourself to the bone. When you come into Spain as a language assistant, it is very easy to have a work-life balance. One, because of the culture here in Spain, people here tend to not. What is this? What is the expression? Work to live. They live. They don't live to work. They work to live. And so it's very easy when you get off of work, or you leave your school to go meet someone for drinks, or meet for a menu del dia, which is like the menu of the day. So it's very possible to have that here, and I think that's something I'm very grateful for. It can, if you are hustling and you're working at another job, working in an academy, it can get a little bit tricky. But the nice thing is that there's so many holidays off. There's lots of 3-day weekends. There's also, you only work 4 days a week. So it's really easy to create that work-life balance when you come here. The third pro is that you get to, if you're a teacher, this is not guaranteed, but there's a chance that you will work with some amazing kids, and they're gonna love you and they're gonna absolutely adore you. Not every school, not every AUX has had this experience, and every language experience has had this experience, but most of the time, like, they're excited to see you and work with you and be a part of their school, the staff and the students. So if you're missing home, or you kind of just want an ego boost, like the students that you work with, if you give your energy and you put in positive energy, you will get that love back. So that's also another pro. It's just being able to work in a relatively positive environment. That's not guaranteed. That does not happen. Not every school is very open and accepting to their language assistant, which is unfortunate. But most of the time, you will get to work with some amazing kids. There's so many opportunities to travel because you're in Spain. Like flights to France and to Italy, even just in Spain, there's so many wonderful places to travel to within Spain that you can go by bus, or we have a system called BlaBlaCar here, or by train. there's so many ways to explore, there's so many opportunities to explore, and you will be able to get that. And it's easy to do that, especially now with less restrictions with the pandemic. So if you want to move abroad but also continue your love for travel, then this is a great opportunity. And the last pro that I like to mention is that it is a lower cost of living depending on where you're going. If you're going into Madrid, then it'll be a somewhat higher cost of living in comparison to other parts of Spain. If you go to a small pueblo, if you go to like Andalusia and different like regional or coastal towns, then the cost of living, at least again for me, coming from Southern California, the cost of living is dramatically low. I think I can definitely go to the grocery store and spend around 30 or 50 euros. 50 euros being on the high end and 30 euros being on like the average end, and get all the things that I need for myself. So it's really the lower cost of living is really great, especially to help you balance out, what you make on the side. And so that's also another pro. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any additional questions about being the auxiliary if you have any additional questions about being a language assistant, please drop your questions in the comment below and I will be sure to answer them. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and tell me what pro are you excited about if you're coming to Spain, or tell me what did you find most interesting about this video? Were there any information that you weren't expecting? And let me know where you are on your journey, if moving abroad is something that you are considering. If you want some of my professional help, I do travel consultations and I help people to create more concrete plans to move abroad, to get you from, having this simple idea in your head to actually making actionable steps to live in your dream country. Thanks for watching. Ciao for now.